Hello, the internet. Matthew here, coming to you with the first entry in my Mind Program journal. As of the time of this recording, I've had 8 sessions so far, and while it's entirely true that you should not expect to see big changes happen before the first 15 to 20 sessions, I have to say I'm already starting to see some small, subtle changes in my thoughts, mood, and behavior. I want to tell you a little bit about that. As you may know, at age 20, I was diagnosed with ADHD, OCD, and dysthymia. At the time of my diagnosis, I refused pharmaceutical intervention. Instead, I favored an approach that would be a lot more hands-on for me. So under the care and direction of a licensed mental health care provider, I was able to learn techniques that allowed me to monitor my moods, my thoughts, my feelings, and to come up with ways of coping that allowed me to function at a much higher level. I've only been noticing small changes because I've spent years looking for small changes in my own behavior to tell if I was sliding into a depression or if I was getting maybe a little too manic. And this long history of monitoring myself very carefully is the only reason I've actually been able to see any of these small changes at all. As I said in the introductory video, do not expect to see big changes before at least the 15th to 20th sessions. So on April 30th, I had my first Mind Program session. Well, technically it was session 0. This is the brain mapping session. I put on one of those fancy caps and the machine read my brain waves. Basically tried to figure out what parts of my brain needed work and what parts didn't, and the machine would then develop a protocol that the text would follow going forward. May 7th was my first official Mind Program session. Fortunately, I didn't have to wear that cap anymore. Just a few electrodes, and I sat down and had the session. Really, it was a fairly benign experience. I left feeling very serene though, maybe because I sat down for half an hour, which is not something that actually happens much in my life. If you've ever had a really intense conversation with a friend or family member, and they give you really solid advice and you just kind of chew on it for a while, that's what I felt like for the rest of the day. Same thing a week later on May 14th, same exact feeling of just leaving very calm, very relaxed, and just feeling like I was chewing on something in the back of my head that I couldn't put my finger on. The third session, I left feeling the exact same way on May 21st. After that, something interesting started to happen. In the week between my third and fourth session, I started to notice that I was having romantic feelings for a friend. They started coming up to the surface a lot faster than they normally would have. This doesn't sound strange to most normal and not entirely screwed up people. But for me, it was a moment where I realized that for my entire life, if ever I had romantic feelings for someone that seemed inconvenient, which is pretty much almost all of them, I would compartmentalize like a pro. I would ignore, suppress, push aside, deny to myself for as long as possible, and sometimes I could drag this process on for months. Now, I know I've built a brand on going into yourself and being honest with yourself and being brave enough to push those things that society or your upbringing might encourage you to hide. I don't want to seem like a hypocrite here, but I didn't even know I was really doing that. I didn't really know that was a problem until I suddenly wasn't doing it, until the feelings that I was having were not being hidden anymore. I had to stop and I had to really look back on my past and realize that from a very young age, romantic feelings, crushes, and all that stuff was always discouraged in my house and in my church. So I never really built healthy mental and emotional skills to understand, assess, and express those feelings in a healthy way. So I wasn't sure why this was happening. At first I thought maybe it has something to do with the treatment I'm getting. So I spoke with the experts. I was told that the machine does, in fact, help heal trauma. Well, that fits the bill. So I'm going to have to assume that the treatment has something to do with the fact that I was starting to feel feelings that I would normally suppress. What's more, I was actually able to process these feelings and act on them in a healthy way. And then something even more interesting happened. Not only was I rejected by my friend at that point, but not that long after that, on June 1st, I had another session, and shortly after that, approached another woman and got turned down again. In both cases, I didn't even break stride. Now, those who know me personally know I thrive on rejection. Don't really take it personally, and I just keep going. But it was a little bit different for me in these two cases. It really, really juiced me. Normally, when I get rejected, you feel that little bit of sting, and you keep going. I didn't even feel the sting at all. And that was a little bit different of an experience. Again, a very small change. Now, my sixth session was on June 4th, and if you're following this channel, you'll know that on June 2nd, I began a ketogenic diet. As I explained in my introductory video, I began a ketogenic lifestyle to improve my brain health, and I'm engaged in the MIND program to improve my brain health. The fact that I'm doing them both at once started to concern me a little bit, that maybe I might be cross-contaminating the results. In the interest of science, it might seem more interesting to focus on doing one and then another. In terms of my own health, as long as I was working towards the same goal, it didn't really matter. In fact, the ketogenic diet and all the health benefits that it espouses for the brain might actually help accelerate my own healing with the MIND program. But of course, I don't want to get ahead of myself. So I had my 7th session on June 11th. And by this point, I had already come past the keto flu. I was starting to get my strength back physically. I was noticing that the brain fog that I had lived in for so many years was already starting to lift. I was also starting to see some more things change in my life. Being forgetful and somewhat scatterbrained is actually very common for people with ADHD. As a kind of weird blessing, my obsessive compulsive disorder actually helps me combat a lot of problems that come with ADHD. I set up so many rituals for myself that I don't forget a lot of things that some other people I know who have ADHD but don't have the obsessive compulsive disorder may tend to. And this goes for a lot of things in my life and in my day. What I started to notice, if I forgot something, I would go back for it before I passed the point of no return. This has started to happen more and more and more by about the 7th session. Not only that, I started remembering things in the past with a lot more clarity. I started remembering people's names more, which is something I'm absolutely atrocious with. I have to attribute this to the MIND program session, but there could also be a correlation with the ketogenic diet reducing the inflammation in my body and clearing out my mind as well. Oh, and one more thing. I would honestly say that since about maybe the 4th or 5th session, I noticed that I was having fewer emotional outbursts. I was being aggravated and angered with much less intensity. And it's clear that I could feel my emotions a lot better. I just wasn't getting as irritated as much. And again, I'm not entirely sure if it's the MIND program adjusting my brain waves, or the ketogenic diet reducing inflammation and overall irritation in my body, or a total combination of the two, but I am feeling and living so much happier. My relations with my friends, family, and coworkers are already starting to improve. People have already been making comments to me that I just seem calmer, a lot more focused, and just a lot more zen. If this trend continues, I can't tell you what a relief it would be to know that I can have a lot more control over how I react to situations. Because as we all know, we cannot control what happens in our lives. But if we can control how we react, well, then we do have control over our lives, don't we? My 8th session was on June 18th. I haven't noticed any more changes than the ones I've already mentioned. But I'd say I'm already off to a great start, and I'm very enthusiastic and optimistic about the future. And I want to state again for the record, you should not expect results before the 15th to 20th session. The only reason I've been able to report on some of these small, subtle changes already is because, again, I've spent a large portion of my life carefully monitoring all the little things that change in me from day to day. So if you want more information about the MIND program, I suggest you check down the description below for all the links to the Phi Center. Follow them on social media. And if you have any questions or comments about my experience, I will be happy to answer them as bluntly and honestly as possible. And if there's something I can't answer for you, I will make sure to get you the information as quickly as possible. So I want to thank you for tuning in. Check back in about a month. I will have another update video after I've had another 4 sessions, so that I will again be able to backtrack for each one and hopefully give you a more accurate snapshot of my process as I continue my treatments with the Mind program. So for now, this is Matthew of Monster Health and Fitness signing off and reminding you to get out of your own way. I know I sure am. Take care, everybody.